All right, Dr. Jacqui Fleury, thanks for joining us in Grimerica. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, this will be fun. I think this is really important work you're doing. I want to talk. We were talking to some friends at a gathering, and I was telling everybody about your sludge product, and I really feel like females need a hand in the health. They seem to be not no disparagement at all, but just like seems to be a lot of women problems happening, and especially during menopause. So, looking forward to chatting about it.
Well, I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you because chapter 15 of my book was written just for you. And all the men in the world who have a lot of questions as well. So because yes, menopause affects women, but it definitely has a collateral effect on everybody.
Yeah, no kidding. What about yourself? How you got into naturopathy, that kind of stuff? Were you always in that trajectory? Did you change paths along the way at all, or you've been doing this for a couple decades, helping
I
people
have.
out?
I've been doing it for 25 years and had never heard of a naturopathic doctor before I was working for a chiropractor. I had a job after my first year of university. I took a year off and was introduced to a chiropractor who had a very holistic view on health. And he sat me down one day and said, you can actually go to school and become a doctor that works in natural medicine. And I, to that point, had never had heard of any such thing. But I had my own health challenges. I had really quite a severe skin condition. I had very bad acne, and I was quite unhealthy in my late teens, early 20s. So I had done a little bit of that work myself. I had healed my skin and I had lost some weight, and I was just feeling a lot better. And it was also at that intersection when I was working with the chiropractor, and he said, "You seem to have an interest in this." So that was my first introduction to naturopathic medicine. But most importantly, I was really taken by the whole concept of proactive health and what taking responsibility for our health could actually do for us. So I was very, very passionate about it from that stage on.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's even an important aspect of taking responsibility, even if you were in the system, like even in the system with the Canada's medical system. Like I remember when my dad had cancer, my mom had to take control of the whole thing, like in a way, right? Just to try and keep things going. So I think even no matter what, you kind of have to take responsibility.
Absolutely. You have to learn how to be your own advocate, and certainly in that situation having another strong advocate is really important.
So how long did it take you to then become a naturopathic doctor?
So I did 3 years of pre-med training. I did that education here at U of S in Saskatoon. And then I went on to Bastyr University in Seattle, Washington, where I completed 4 years there. So a total of 7, 8. And there's additional training that you can go through after the fact, but that actual stretch for me was 7 years.
So what do you find? How do you find it now with all the new technology and biohacking? And I mean, you must have seen quite a change in the last 10 years. We kind of talk about this biohacking a lot ever since probably 2017, 2018, when it kind of became somewhat popular. There seems to be like a leading edge science that's happening along with I'm sure your industry as well, that's outside of kind of the medical system in a way. Like I feel like you guys are kind of more in tune with the science.
Mm. Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to the biohacking, when I think about how that particular aspect has changed my practice, I would say, although I stay with the trends, and in many ways I'm sort of out and ahead of some of what is available, there still is a place for what I would consider the foundational care that we require in terms of our health. So the biohacking, I feel like, is like the icing on a cupcake, and I find that a lot of the biohacking is not going to be effective, especially with the population that I work with. If you haven't addressed the foundation and done the fundamental care, then a lot of the biohacking is it's kind of like playing a game of whack-a-mole. So it doesn't really apply to everybody. It applies to that percentage of the population that's already at an elite level of health. I think that would be my experience. I think when women find their way to me, and men as well, because I work with both, but I think predominantly when women find their way to me, they're often they'll arrive with shopping bags full of supplements, like they've seen something online, or they've heard an interview about a product or something, and they really are trying to get to the root of why they feel unwell, and yet a lot of it doesn't work if you haven't addressed the foundation. So I think there's a lot of value for that biohacking. It's just not the best place to start.
Right, right. But do you has your lab analysis, any of that kind of normal stuff that you do, has that improved a lot in the last few years, or is it just kind of the same stuff?
Well, I think that yes and no. So I think that I have learned and have access to probably better testing over time. I think that I'm accessing information differently. So like my most recent example would be to really be dialing in people's omega 6 to 3 ratio. So that's something that's existed, I mean, in the literature for years. It's not something that was really commonly utilized, but it's one of those foundational markers. And unless that's been corrected, then a lot of other markers are it's sort of secondary. So that I think has been a game changer for me for sure in the last year. And again, I've just learned about a gut health test that's been become available in the US. It's not quite here in Canada. So just with a couple of drops of blood, we can assess the health of the microbiome. So I would say that the testing is becoming more relevant when you can attach the results to an action. So I feel like there's no point in doing testing if you're not going to change what you're going to do with those test results.
Right.
So yes.
Which is the foundation? What's the foundation?
Well, a big part of the foundation is the gut, and then what's happening at the level of the cell membrane. So I always describe there's two main bottlenecks in our health. The first one is going to be, are you digesting, absorbing, and eliminating at the level of the gut? And then at the granular level, what's going on at the level of the cell membrane? So are good things getting into the cell and bad things getting out? So those are kind of the two foundational areas to focus on. And I find that's what moves the needle predominantly the best for people clinically.
And that would be because the gut's connected to all kinds of stuff, your brain,
Yeah.
your pain.
70% of your immune system is found in your gut. And 90% of your serotonin, which is your feel-good hormone, is produced in the gut. So when we think about, even from a mental health perspective, the impact that we can have on somebody's mental health just by focusing on the gut is like it's really quite transformational for people. And then there's still a place for doing the work that we need to do, often with medications that affect that serotonin in the brain. You can often see some really dramatic results with that as well. But when we have access to the majority of the serotonin in the gut, and then serotonin converts to melatonin, and we've got tryptophan production going on in the gut. So it's just a powerhouse of like what you can do with your health is rooted in the gut.
Right. Darren, you got a question?
What's sort of the basic gut care protocol that, because I'm guessing most people probably have messy guts.
So I like to talk about your gut as if it's a garden. And in your garden, you'll have some weeds and you have some flowers, and then you have the compost, which is the food that you consume, and then the terrain, which is the environment that everybody cohabitates in. And due to certain lifestyle factors, whether that's history of medication use or sugar in the diet or stress or hormone fluctuations, there's all sorts of lifestyle factors that will contribute to your garden becoming weedy. So yes, I mean, there would be way more technical terms that I could use to describe this imbalance. And one of the medical terms is dysbiosis. But at the end of the day, when I describe it as a weedy garden, and then we talk about what do we do about the weeds in the garden, that's where that's the work that I've done for years in terms of essentially weeding the garden and fertilizing. And that at least helps the person get out and ahead of a lot of the symptoms that they're dealing with.
So that kind of gets into you developed a product called Sludge. I mean, we might as well just jump into that because I found you. I was looking for, my partner here had really bad migraines, and we had just these ongoing health issues. But I was like, I need to find somebody. I just was coming to mind as like IV supplementation, um, which is one of the things that we tried to do during COVID, but we couldn't. Because of the everything being locked down, the system. But anyways, I found you, and we tried the sludge, and it seems to be working. It seems to be helping quite a bit. I mean, it's definitely, a lot of these sort of acute problems have tapered down for sure. And I've been telling friends about the sludge because it really just seems like it's out of the stuff that I've learned over the last 10 years on health and wellness and all this, that seems to combine a lot of the stuff we've been talking about. So maybe just talk about like how you came about like creating this product that would help your gut.
Well, it started many years ago, early into my practice, which was happening in Calgary. So I joined a practice with two other naturopathic doctors who at that point were at the age that I am now. So they were in their 50s, and they were working mostly with middle-aged women. So women in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And I learned very quickly that the best results were going to happen when we worked with that foundational kind of that root cause approach. And we were using a combination of ingredients. So we would send patients home with a collection of things that they would mix up on their countertop, shake it up and drink it. And so early on, I was seeing the benefits of not just treating the gut, because a lot of people were experiencing benefits in how their gut was feeling. So less gas and bloating, less heartburn, less reflux. Their stools were better. So all the things that we would expect to see happening in the gut. But then I started to notice that we were seeing benefits in their skin and their hair, and their moods were better. The brain fog was lifting hormonally. They were having cycles that were not riddled with PMS and mood swings and headaches and all sorts of things. So I continued to use that combination, and patients would come back and they would say, whatever that sludgy stuff is that you have me taking, it's working. I don't know what it's doing, but it seems to be working. And they would say that repeatedly to me, whatever that sludgy stuff is, you've got me mixing, it's working. And in 2018, so fast forward to being in practice in Saskatchewan for the last 20 plus years, and I started to experience supply chain issues. I couldn't get those ingredients anymore. And in fact, one of the suppliers went out of business. And so I stopped and I thought, well, maybe I can find other products that will do what this was doing for my patients. And I looked around both retail, and I looked at the professional suppliers I was working with, and I could tell that there was just nothing that was going to do what this combination was doing for me.
Wow.
So I worked with a manufacturer, and we took the ingredients, which were powders and liquids, and we were able to formulate it into an all-in-one powder. And that received Health Canada approval in 2020. So it was right about that time that COVID was hitting. So I didn't bother to try and move it into retail. I just kept using it in my clinic. And I was just seeing such great results. Like it was transformative. Like people would literally say, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that, they would come back and say, I feel like this product saved my life. So I have patients who can't leave their house because they have such severe bowel issues, which then ties into the anxiety cycle. They're afraid to leave the house, so then they develop anxiety. So that's one component. But then other people that really have struggled, they've tried lots of other digestive products, and they just can't seem to get out and ahead of their issues. So traveler's diarrhea is another one. Like there's been all sorts of instances where they've never been well since. So I had a patient that had been on a cruise every year for however many years, 20 years, every year she would get sick. And so we said, let's see if we can't get you on a cruise this year where you come home and you're not sick. And we worked the plan, and she came back and she said, for the first time in 20 plus years, I'm not sick. I didn't get sick on the cruise. So it really is probably what I would say the single underserviced aspect of health is the gut. And I think that unless you understand really what's going on, the gut is complicated. But when you understand what those symptoms mean and what's lying at the root of those imbalances, it can be a pretty life-changing experience to have your gut working for you instead of against you.
And even though we all have different sort of, because we've talked about this genetic difference between how guts handle carbs and stuff, like Northern Europeans might be able to eat more carbs than others, and like the people that sort of have their genetics from the equator, but this product is going to help no matter what your sensitivities are, right?
Well, if you have a weedy garden, then yes, that this product is going to make a difference in a way that others often, it's not that they don't work, it's just that sometimes they don't fully address that dysbiotic state that's going on in the gut. So because it works to increase the bulk of the stool, plus it has almost a magnetic or a drawing effect. So really what we want to see happen is a really good complete elimination. And so I think in a lot of cases, when people feel, so we're going to talk poop. Are we good
Yeah,
with that?
yeah, that's,
Okay.
oh yeah, you can
Okay, so
talk shit all you want.
okay,
You
so
can
we're gonna
talk shit if you want. Yeah.
we're gonna have poop talk, but often when people think they're having a good bowel movement, they're not. They're actually probably not completely cleaning out, especially if they have diarrhea or loose stools. A lot of that stool is just sort of leaking past what's often built up on the lining of the gut. So when they actually experience a really good, complete bowel movement, they're often shocked. They're like, I had no idea that I had that much poop in me. And so when that starts to clean out better, then so many of the other products that they might be wanting to use, whether that's a digestive enzyme or bitters or anti-parasitic, like there's parasite cleansers, there's all sorts of really you know reasonable products, and there's a place for them all, but it's understanding where they fit best and what those symptoms are before you do some of those other therapies. And then a person will often benefit better from a digestive enzyme or a probiotic, or some people just can't even tolerate fiber. They try and increase their fiber because they hear it's good for them. They try and eat more fiber and they just feel like they're going to explode with gas. So that's a classic sign often of a weedy garden.
Huh. And this product is something you can just mix at home. Yeah, you just dump it in like water or liquid, mix it up, and do it sort of like a daily thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And it's a therapeutic gut product. So I spend a lot of time educating, whether I'm talking to natural product advisors or other practitioners, that you will feel something on this product usually within 7 days, because I've followed up with enough people within that 1 week time frame. And some people feel better and some people feel worse because it's having that therapeutic effect on that reorganization within the gut. So making sure that you have a nice hydrated bowel movement. Magnesium citrate is one of those minerals that hold water in the stool and contribute to a softer, easier to pass bowel movement. So often those two pair really well together.
And what's the main? Can you talk about the ingredients at all, or?
Yeah, so it's a synergistic blend of psyllium, MCT oil, acacia fiber, and diatomaceous earth. So that combination will increase the bulk of the stool. It'll have some of that weeding effect, and then that drawing effect, that adsorbent effect of helping things to be displaced from the lining of the gut and helping that to move out a bit more effectively.
Excellent.
So
And
it's like a scraping. It's like a flush, basically.
Yeah, it goes in one end and out the other, but it's not a purge. It's not like,
It's more of an attraction, like a magnetic. I almost picture
yeah,
like the way charcoal kind of absorbs stuff, kind of like that, as opposed to scraping the bowels,
that's
is kind of
exactly it.
collecting it, or
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, where somebody might do a parasite cleanse where they're taking botanicals, which are quite they're quite therapeutic in terms of their anti-parasitic effects, but we really do want to make sure that we're removing whatever that pathogenic fallout is from using those herbs. So that's why some people feel better when they cleanse, and some people really aggravate because there is what we call a die-off response that can happen, and that can make a person feel quite toxic. So the way that I've educated is the sludge is a really great starting point, and then sort of moving into some of these other areas of other modalities of treatment if you still feel like there's more work to do in the work around the weeding. So whether that's doing like if you I don't know, how much do you guys talk about products or like natural
yeah,
remedies here?
quite a bit. I would say over the years, lots of different sort of health and wellness, natural stuff kind of comes up. Yeah.
Yeah, so your listeners would be familiar with, some of the different 21-day cleanses or
Oh
whatever. If
yeah.
you
Yeah.
walk into a health food store, you're going to see all sorts of options around these cleanses and detoxes. And we have to remember that the liver is detoxing all the time. That's its primary function. So it's not that it's just sitting there like half asleep until you like do a liver cleanse and then all of a sudden it wakes up and goes, oh, well, I guess I should cleanse. So the liver is constantly cleansing. So what we really want to do is support the liver's ability to have the right building blocks to do its job effectively, like on an ongoing basis, rather than kind of hammering away at it with a 21-day cleanse. And that's always been my approach. I just find that the average person walking around, unless they're at an elevated level of health, most people are depleted. They're stressed often. They're maybe a bit malnourished in the sense that maybe not eating as well as they ideally would like to. And then you try and take that person and you just run their liver through a 21-day cleanse, and it can add more stress to the system.
Yeah, there's a lot of publicity right now around the parasite cleanses, around the whole like kind of new age health community. Now there's all let's talk about parasites and cleansing parasites, and it's kind of scary. It's scaring a lot of people too. I mean, they pulling out these big worms and stuff, and it's like, who wants to do that?
Well, again, I find I've always my intention has always been to kind of walk the middle ground with to try and stay away from the extremes one way or the other, because I find that when you first of all you treat the person, and every person is going to be an individual, but the less is more approach often seems to be received really well by the person's vital force, because let's face it, we've been full of parasites since the beginning of time. So this is nothing new. A parasite is just one of the weeds in a garden. So
Right, right.
there's certain countries that have been dealing, parasites are just part of that's just part of life. But so when you think about the parasites are just part of the biome. And so what happens is when that biome becomes more hospitable to some of these pathogens being able to get more of a stronghold in the gut, then that's when they sort of tip the cart more towards the pathogenic environment. And again, that stems right back to, well, what makes that biome more hospitable to the microbes, to the pathogenic microbes? So it's back to our lifestyle. It's back to the person that's constipated, the person that doesn't eat enough fiber, the person that travels, the person. So there's all these lifestyle factors that just contribute to a weedy garden. So
Do you need
that's
any weeds?
pardon me.
Do you need any weeds in the garden?
Well, they're going to be there. So we'll always have a few, but it's about making sure that we have enough of the good guys in the system to help sort of keep everybody else at check.
So you went retail with your product then?
I did. So it's in 23 locations in Vancouver. There's the Pure
Oh,
Integrative
good. Oh,
Pharmacy, and there are some other natural food markets that carry it, some healthcare providers. So slowly making its way into retail,
nice.
which I'm excited about because I believe that it has the ability to. It's kind of it's in a category all on its own, and yet on the shelf it sits in the gut health section, which makes sense. But it's kind of its own little product.
What
Yeah,
about online?
I was just gonna ask that, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it is available online as well.
So from Canada, like anybody in Canada could order it?
Correct. Yes.
Is that masteryourmoods.com?
Yes. Yeah, and it can also be found on Replete is also one of my distributors. So, but yes, mastermoods.com.
Okay, replete.com or
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, that's exciting. I mean, that really is it's exciting. I tried the diatomaceous earth and then they ran maybe it was the same supplier that stopped I'm trying to remember what it was, something Black Earth or some weird name like that back. Apparently it was like a mine back east where they found all this stuff. And yeah, it was I think they whoever was trying to sell it to me went out of business too or something. So
Mhm.
I'm glad you found your product and made it all happen. That's great. So let's talk about your book, I guess, and like menopause and some advice for women that are going into there. I mean, maybe do we even we should probably define it even like for people that don't know. For
Yeah. Well,
the men out there that need to understand what their women are going to go through.
Well, I like to say that menopause is an amplification of what's been going on for the woman 10, 15, even 20 years leading into that time frame where she goes a full year without having a period. So that's the definition of menopause. And I have worked in women's health my whole career. So as I mentioned back in the days when I was practicing in Calgary, we were predominantly working with women in menopause already before it was having its moment like it is now. And when I started my practice here in Saskatchewan, that was right around the time. So that was 2010. And that was when the Women's Health Initiative study was being halted prematurely due to the what they were finding was women were having heart attacks and they were developing breast cancer. And there were all these health events that were happening um, that with these women who had been taking hormone replacement therapy.
Wow.
So are you familiar with that study?
No, no.
So it generated a lot of fear and women stopped taking their hormones. And in fact, they were seeking alternatives to hormone replacement because they were very fearful of using hormones. So that was a very pivotal moment for women in midlife because although some women were having really great results with the hormones, it scared the majority of the women away from them. So if we fast forward to today, we're learning that study, there was a lot of flaws with the
Oh,
study and with the interpretation of the results. But the relevance of that for me was women were asking for support and resources outside of the use of hormones. And so that in combination with the fact that it wasn't in my scope to prescribe hormones required me to become very resourceful and to really double down on my foundational teachings as a naturopathic doctor, which was treat the person, not the disease, and first do no harm, and doctor as teacher. Those were some of the tenets that I really drew upon to find ways to help women navigate this really tricky time of life. And the reality of it is, I feel like I got pretty good at it. And I would say 90% of the women that I worked with were experiencing really good results with how they were feeling. And then there was about 5 or 10% of the women that just really were too far advanced into the menopausal symptoms, they were in crisis mode. And for those women, it was really important that they seek some hormonal support. But so that is how the book came to be, because I started to realize again, about a couple of years ago, that I was getting reproducible, really good results with just working with that root cause approach, which was, again, helping women to understand that their hormone health is, a lot of it is rooted in their gut health and in that gut brain connection. And so that affects their sleep and their hot flashes and their skin and their brain, the way their brains work. So there's so many different ways that we can positively impact a woman's hormone health and her physical and mental health, really without having to use hormones. So I'm not against hormones. It's just that they weren't an option for the last 20 years of practice, in terms of what I could offer them. So I could offer them opinions around it, and I could help direct them to resources, but it wasn't something I ever prescribed. So we had to get really creative outside of that.
What age does this usually happen to women?
In their 40s to 50s, for sure. So you can start to see changes in the menstrual cycle, even as early as in their mid 30s. And but definitely by their mid 50s, most women have gone through menopause.
And do you have any advice for men?
Well, yes, I do. I have a lot of, first of all, I have empathy for men, because I know that this is a really confusing experience for them, because they watch their partner go from being one way to sometimes being very different. And so definitely want to extend understanding and empathy to you, and also encouragement that you use all of the resources that are available now. Definitely are more resources, and that is why I wrote a chapter in my book for men, because I want you to understand. And so in my chapter, I talk about how it's like having a team captain. So I call it team captain estrogen. And all of a sudden, team captain is no longer there. And so when the team captain has been kind of shoring up a lot of the other team members, so when we think about adrenals and thyroid and gut and liver and all these other aspects of a woman's health, estrogen is like the team captain. So everything can be going sideways behind the scenes. Nobody else might be sort of doing their part, but as long as the captain is there, everybody seems to be functioning okay. But the minute you pull the captain off, all of a sudden the team members, it becomes very apparent that everybody else has been kind of struggling along the way. That's that amplification of the symptoms that I talk about. So really, it's the woman is, for the first time ever, having to face a lot of some of the, some of the maybe unresolved either health issues psychologically or physically. A lot of that will kind of work its way to the surface. So that's kind of the best way that I try and describe it to you, as men, because at the end of the day, it's a lot of it is out of her control in terms of what the estrogen is doing, but it seems like everything just hits all at once. So without having the team captain there, it's chaos.
Does your protocols and stuff help like lessen the length of that chaos then as well?
Well, we definitely, from that root cause perspective, supporting all of the other areas that have probably needed support for quite some time. So yes, it does. And in fact, when we address some of those other factors, then often what is blamed or attributed on menopause, like instead of saying, "Oh, it's just menopause,"
Right.
it's a bunch of other little things that when you course correct, then we start to realize, okay, in spite of the fact that, yes, the estrogen is still dropping, and yes, this woman is still going into menopause, she can still feel better in spite of that, often with or without the use of hormones. So for some women, they're an absolute savior, and for others, it still doesn't correct some of those underlying factors that have been out of balance all along. So I think that's what excites me the most about working with women in menopause is helping them to understand that this isn't just a hormonal issue. This is there's more at play here, and it's a very empowering way to look at menopause.
Darren, you got any questions?
Is there a diet or anything else that, like, so after you do the sludge, do you stick to a certain diet? How do you stop the weeds from getting back up? Is there like
Well,
what's the main stuff that people are eating that's fucking them up?
yes, that's a great question. Well, sugar, so there's certain microbes in the gut that just love sugar. So that's a big one to be mindful of. And to some extent, processed foods are they're they're not necessarily going to be part of your solution. So are they directly part of the problem? Hard to say, but it's easier to say, okay, is this going to be part of my solution in terms of feeding, giving my gut the right type of fuel? Probably not. So I would say fermented foods are really great. So sauerkraut, kefir, kimchi, those types of ferments are really powerful in the gut. And like some of the obvious things, I mean, of course, there would be no debate that alcohol would never be part of the solution when it comes to gut health. And, I try and kind of walk a bit of a 80-20 rule with alcohol. Like at the end of the day, we can all agree it's a toxin. From a gut health perspective, it's certainly not going to be your friend. But again, just try not to paint any one particular food or food category as being bad. I think life's about balance. So
What about carnivore versus keto versus like paleo, that kind of stuff?
again, I think
Depends on
it
the person.
it it depends on the person, and it depends on what you're trying to accomplish and what phase of health a person is at. So I mean, we've all heard the stories about the carnivore diet. Pardon me, like completely like curing or really transforming somebody's health when they're really inflamed or quite unwell. And really, with something like the carnivore diet, you've basically eliminated every possible irritant that could have been aggravating that gut lining. So the carbohydrates, the sugars, the fibers, all of those things are really gone when you do the carnivore diet. So it basically gives the gut a rest. I'm just not sure it's sustainable long term. But as we have access to gut health tests, which are available in the States and on their way up to Canada, then that actually can tell you whether or not whatever you're doing, is it promoting a balanced microbiome, or do you have a dysbiotic or an out of balance? So like what you were asking earlier about the testing, I think as the testing gets better, and when we can take that information and apply it practically to daily life, I think that's where the testing is really valuable.
Yeah. I agree totally.
Is there a
So
difference between people in the away from the equator and people near the equator for like how much? Because you'd think there'd almost be a natural cycle of where you'd be eating more meat all of the time, and you'd sort of do this like annual meat cleanse, probably over the winter when you're eating a lot of dried meats or what you're able to store up. And then in the summer and the fall, you'd kind of hammer down on the fruits and all that kind of stuff when the harvest came in. So there seemed to be this sort of natural ebb and flow before we got into refrigeration and stuff like that. But to that end, the people near the equator, they could always just get fruits and shit all the time. So is there any sort of difference between the guts of the sort of different genetics?
Oh, I would say, yeah, I mean, you bring up really relevant points, which is what do we call that? The 100-mile diet or whatever. Like here's
ancestral, almost where the ancestral. Well, I guess that's not really
yes.
ancestry,
But yeah, kind of how our grandparents would have eaten. So they would have, to your point, they would have had, when things were in season, you would have had the fresh fruits and vegetables and whatever you could either preserve or maybe freeze a little bit. But yes, I think eating seasonally does make sense, and eating what you could pick in your backyard if that's your indigenous diet. Like, so for us here in Saskatchewan, eating blueberries and Saskatoon berries and raspberries as opposed to bananas and pineapple and oranges and the stuff that's never going to grow in our backyard. So I think there's really good relevance to that. And then yes, finding that combination between what you can grow and pick, and yes, in the winter, I mean, even when I was growing up, the most vegetables we had access to was anything that was frozen and basically head lettuce. Like that was it. Like there wasn't a lot of options to shop for in the grocery store. So yeah. And then your microbiome. So that's 6 to 8 pounds of microbes that ride around in your gut, and it's 50% of your DNA. And that changes in response to your environment. So you can take a walk through a forest with a bunch of ferns growing around you, and whatever what's coming off of those ferns is actually colonizing and changing what's going on in your gut in real time. So compare that to being in a really polluted, let's say a city with a lot of smog, and you're walking around in that all day. So it really is that responsive to your environment. So it's just such a dynamic environment. It's an ecosystem that requires, I feel, and I see this clinically, it requires some ongoing maintenance in the same way that you would floss your teeth every day. You don't floss your teeth because you have a cavity and then you get rid of your cavity and then you don't floss your teeth anymore. You floss your teeth proactively. So
That's a great example. I mean, that's a great physical example of how that environment seeps into your system, and obviously would resonate. I don't know if resonate is the right word, but maybe interact better with locally grown stuff instead of this foreign food that's being shipped all over from somewhere else.
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think that the takeaway is how dynamic it is. And so if you were living at the equator, then your environment is going to be colonizing a whole different um, colony inside of you than if you were living in Alaska. So,
Right.
but then can you adapt? Of course you could. When you move, then you adapt.
Yeah,
Does
yeah.
sunlight play a role?
Sorry?
Does sunlight play a role?
Oh, I think sunlight plays a big role. So for one reason, I mean, it produces vitamin D on your skin, and vitamin D is a hormone and it's a signaling molecule. So so that's huge. And I think for sure where we live, I try and make a point of making sure everybody gets their levels tested so that you know whether or not you've optimized the absorption of that vitamin D. Either most of us are needing to supplement here, and then we're also encouraged to wear sunscreen, which of course also can affect the way your body produces vitamin D. The sun needs to shine on your skin.
What about the red shift and circadian rhythms? Seeing the sun in the daylight, the actual outside light in the morning and at night to help people sleep. I mean, I feel like that would help even women during menopause too, sort of being in tune with the circadian rhythm and not being up all night or.
Yes. Yeah. If they can help it, because often as part of this transition, there's sleep disruptions where they will sometimes wake up in the middle of the night. And there's various reasons for that, but definitely bright light from the sun in the morning and then darkening the room at nighttime. Like you said, watching the sunset if you can, and then putting yourself in the dark for the remainder of the day is how the brain regulates the melatonin release.
What about screens? How do screens affect menopause? Do they?
Well,
I mean, there's just all this stuff that's trying to hijack emotions, and it seems like the emotions might be susceptible to hijacking during some of these times.
I like the way you describe that. I would say that as the hormones are dropping and as the estrogen levels, estrogen and progesterone levels, when they drop, it's like the buffer that we may have had towards our external environment seems to become diminished. And so the ability to buffer the environment, which sort of feeds into maybe feeling more emotional, feeling more sensitive, more on edge, more irritable. A lot of that is definitely due to that lack of buffer. The estrogen kind of has that ability to help with our ability to cope. So when that's gone or when it's diminished, it can work into our advantage because it's kind of gives you that ability to have the, kind of don't give a, what anymore. But it sometimes can work to our disadvantage where it's like you don't feel like yourself, like the response. You might, respond to a situation aggressively or extra angrily, and then realize like that doesn't that's not me. Like that's not how I am normally. So a lot of women will say, I just want to feel like myself again. I want to be back to myself.
Wow.
And is that what happens, or do they just have to adapt to the new self ultimately?
It's a little of both, for sure. I mean, definitely, I do hear women all the time say, I do feel more like myself. Like when you get them feeling better, they feel better kind of in their body and in their emotions. They start to recognize themselves again in their responses or in their moods or in their energy. But it is also a time of transformation and a time of new beginnings and sort of reinventing ourselves when we're no longer, playing the primary role of caretaker, maybe as a mom or as a daughter. Maybe professionally, their lives have changed. And so it's really about, trying to look at what am I going to do with the next 50 years of my life.
Do you guys even do you do the vitamin D testing yourself or?
It is there. So it's a blood spot test. So
Okay.
it can be performed that way, or it can be done as a blood draw. So
I
yes.
remember asking this doctor I went in to see for something, just like I'd never been to her before, but this is in the system, and she was like, "Oh, I said, well, how's my vitamin D?" And she goes, "We don't test for that anymore." So
Yeah.
I guess in the system, she goes, "It's just common knowledge that you're supposed to take 1,000 IU's or 2,000." I can't remember the
Mhm.
number she gave me, but I'm like, "Well, who's telling us that?" I mean, I'm not hearing that from any official
How
source.
does that number change from, say, a white person to a native person to a black person who are taking in all different amounts of vitamin D? Like, there's black people you'd think have to take more vitamin D if they're living at a northern latitude.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's different person to person, 100%. And so I think the vitamin D, the decision to not test vitamin D levels is one of economics. It's not necessarily one of best practice
Wow.
because vitamin D can be toxic. So I have patients who are taking 10,000 IU's a day. I have some that are taking 1,000. And I don't know from person to person. I'd just be guessing if I was to advise them on a dosage, especially when there is a viable blood test that can confirm that for us. So for women in menopause, we need to know what those vitamin D levels are because it regulates calcium. So we're talking about bone density, we're talking about brain health and mood and gut health, and vitamin D is integral. I mean, if you sat for half an hour on PubMed and looked up vitamin D and gut or brain or bone density, I mean, it is vital that vitamin D be optimized. So it's not enough to just say, take 1,000 and call it a day. So some people are taking 10,000 and still not hitting their levels.
Oh,
And
wow.
other people, I saw somebody today who's taking 2,000 and he's going to have to take a break from it for a while because his levels are way too high. So when we know better, we do better, and we monitor what we measure. So these are key markers that do make sense to monitor, for sure.
Speaking of that, can we ask you some questions about the the healthcare system, kind of your practice? Will you take patients from all over Canada in your practice?
Just from Saskatchewan in terms of my practice,
Yeah.
which is another reason why I made the decision to move my product into retail, because there are people that will never access the care of a naturopathic doctor, whether it's
No.
me or anybody else. Either they can't afford it, it's not accessible. There's many barriers to accessing the care of a naturopathic doctor. But that person might be more inclined to walk into a health food store and talk to a product advisor, or perhaps see it online or something. So that was my reason, was to not get licensed in every state and province, but to be able to use my observations and my experience and my teachings over the years, and be able to put those tools into the hands of people.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So can you, just for even for Saskatchewan listeners, I'm sure there's a few or a couple maybe, but some insurance covers naturopath, and I guess that would be the umbrella that you fall under if they have like company insurance. Sometimes you get like $500 a year that covers so they could come and see you and get some of it covered then, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's anywhere from $300 to $500, which is it's great. I always say insurance is a catalyst. So when you want to access, my services or the services of a naturopathic doctor, I would say the coverage has not kept pace with our fee schedule, which has, obviously increased it's been $300 to $500 since I've been in practice, and that's years.
Yeah.
So that coverage has not kept pace with any of our, whether you're a chiropractor, a massage therapist, any of that coverage. But unfortunately, so I basically just say, think of the insurance as a catalyst. It helps get you in the door and sort of give you a little bit of a boost to get you introduced into the services and the care. But when we're talking about proactive health, we don't want insurance coverage to dictate how we access proactive health, because this is an ongoing journey. And so you want to think about what you're investing in your health now to stay healthy versus the cost of being sick and then having to go the other route.
Yeah.
So
one of the things that when we were at one of our last gatherings, a lot of the women were complaining about the same issues they've been having. I think they were prescribed, they were over medicated with antibiotics, I think, which were causing numerous issues and stuff. So how's your I don't even know where the question is on this, but it's kind of your system, which is kind of parallel or outside the main system. How is it a challenge navigating that, especially in the last couple of years, the last 5 years? Like a lot of these health shows that we do, we've had to put on our other channel, Grimerica Outlawed, because we were censored. I mean, we were even censored over talking about vitamin D 5 years ago. Like it's been like a battle, really, talking about natural health and wellness. I mean, so this is almost a change on this show. This show's a little bit more esoteric, but I guess where's my question in that? It's kind of like, how have you handled or navigated there seems to be, to put it bluntly, a war on natural health. But I've also seen you on mainstream TV talking about your work and stuff. So you seem to be welcome in with your one foot in that camp.
well, I think that as long as I've been in the field of naturopathic medicine, and even prior to that, I think that when you understand the history of medicine, and if you were to go back and look at how medicine evolved to be what it is today, there's a significant turning point in the history of medicine. And if we go way back to the days of Hippocrates, it was first do no harm there, and it was doctor's teacher, and it was Hippocrates knew that the gut was the seat of health. So it's really only been in the last years of our time that medicine has been the way it is. So I always go back to the foundation and to the historical teachings. And I was at a convention in Norway last week, and one of the main speakers was talking about the history of medicine and how antibiotics came to be, and the germ theory and all of it. And I think that honestly, I think we can all agree that we've made spectacular advances in medicine since the early days. And I think that we can never go wrong if we can all agree that everybody has its place. Everybody has a place in the world of healthcare. And I think just going back to how does each person take care of themselves to the best of their abilities, so that they're not a burden to their family, to their friends, to their partners, but also that have a responsibility to the system. So I think that, I don't know, I've always walked that middle ground. I think that's the answer, is that I'm not at war with anybody. I always, if I break my leg, or if I need acute care, there's nobody that can do that better than our healthcare system. It's just that when you apply an acute care model to a chronic care,
Exactly.
that we start to we run into issues, because we can't effectively manage all of the chronic illnesses in an 8-minute doctor's appointment. And so we have a lack of continuity of care, and not everybody has a medical doctor. Most people that I work with don't have medical doctors anymore. So it creates there's bottlenecks everywhere we go. So I think, and naturopathic doctors, depending on where they're practicing, they have a full scope. So if you're in BC, you have a different scope. If you're in the US, you function as a primary care provider in very much the same way an MD does, or a nurse practitioner. So people have choices. And I think that the more they want to take responsibility and educate themselves on how to do that effectively, I think that's a win-win. I think that frees up the medical profession to do what they do best, and it helps us do what we do best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good answer. So,
Doctor, go ahead.
well, how's Saskatchewan are you happy with your, what's the word you used for your responsibilities, like your scope in Saskatchewan, or?
Yeah, so we don't have prescriptive authority here in Saskatchewan right now. We certainly have been working towards that for a few years. But it's never been that, I've never seen that as a barrier, because it's just allowed me to do what I was trained to do. I just drew on all my tools. And there, in the times where I think that somebody needs to go for medication, there's always been the ability to send that person off somewhere to get that care. So
Yeah, exactly.
so that's
And
where the
I guess my main concern is I feel like you and a lot of the people we've talked to in the States, the functional doctors and the people that are kind of doing your work in the States, that seem to have more autonomy down there. Just hoping that, that you have the potential to grow and help more people, I guess, without being unfairly, squashed by the system, I guess, So.
Well, I think that it comes, there's always going to be competing forces at play, no matter where we are and what we're doing.
Yeah.
I just focus on where I feel like I can make a difference, and I channel the majority of my energy there. I find that it's far less energy draining when you focus on where you have control.
Oh yeah, that's 100%. That's good too. And plus it's also I don't know, it's good spiritually as well, not to be a victim and not to be in that resentment's not going to get you anywhere either. So
Yes, exactly. No, I've got there's so much good work to do, and I think we can all agree that there can never be too much good news. And so I spend a lot of time just focusing on the good news that I see every day, in the work that my clients do, and in the response that I get from, just helping people feel better. That makes my day.
nice. I love it. Darren, what were you going to say there?
I was just going to ask Dr. Jacqui where we could get her book, and if she could give us the websites again for where people can grab the sludge. Is it the sludge?
So that would be on the Master Your Moods website, and my book is available on Amazon, or if there's any local listeners, I carry the book on site in my clinic, but Amazon is Amazon.com and Amazon.ca. And at some point, there's
you ship to the States or just Canada?
It'll ship from Amazon.com.
No, I mean the powder, I guess.
Oh,
the
the
slush.
powder?
You're not going to the
No,
States?
not at this point, but we're working on that.
Oh, that's good.
Get it into the US, yes.
So again, it's Master Your Moods for Menopause is the name of the book, right? A
Yes.
practical guide to feel more like yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. What was I gonna say right before Darren mentioned that? Did we catch everything that think we needed to about the book and stuff? Oh, what did you say? Are you trying to get it on Audible? Is that what you're gonna say?
Oh, I have an audio book coming,
Oh,
so
good.
it's
Okay.
still in the works, yes.
Yeah. When do you think that'll be out?
Soon.
Okay.
Soon. And they've been working on it for a while, so
Okay,
yes.
good. Awesome. That's good. Yeah, that's important to get that out there. A lot of people are listening these days. So.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for
this has
all the
been
links in the show notes.
Come back anytime.
Thank you. I'd love
Yeah.
that.
Okay, see ya.
And that was a chat with Dr. Jacqui Fleury. True potential health. Master your moods for menopause. Do you think you get menopause, Graham?
Menopause.
Menopause?
Yeah.
Is that set in? Or is that coming?
I've already got through it.
Okay. Are you already going through it?
I'm playing hockey next week. I'll tell you after that. I'm going to go for it again. So
And then you'll know if you're like post midlife.
post menopause or not. If I make it without an injury, maybe we'll see. But yeah, I'm going to play next week. So
Mid 50s. So you would have started it by now for sure.
yeah.
Huh. I wonder if there's a cycle for dudes that we could track with you. We'll see how you do at hockey. We'll start with that. Get that book for the ladies in your life. Send them that way. We do have some ladies listed in the show. I think it's about 10%, but it is mostly dudes. But I mean, y'all got ladies, so send them that way. We appreciate Dr. Jack coming on the show. We appreciate you guys listening even more if you support the show. GrayAmerica.ca/support. We can't do the show without you. We do need you. Check out GrayAmericaOutlawed.ca for other podcasts. Contact at thecabin.com for trips and events. Adultbrain.ca for audiobooks, ebooks, etc. And GrayAmericaCBD.com for gummies and tinctures. Check that out. If that's what floats your boat, we're partnering with True Hemp Science on that, so you can check that out. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.